Good afternoon. Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with felony violations of our national security laws, as well as participating in a conspiracy to obstruct justice. This indictment was voted by a grand jury of citizens in the Southern District of Florida, and I invite everyone to read it in full to understand the scope and the gravity of the crimes charged. The men and women of the United States intelligence community and our armed forces dedicate their lives to protecting our nation and its people. Our laws that protect national defense information are critical to the safety and security of the United States, and they must be enforced.
Okay, so we need to talk about what just happened because Jack Smith just dropped what might be the most devastating court filing in the entire Trump prosecution saga. We're talking about 165 pages of evidence that reads like a prosecutor's dream and a defense attorney's absolute worst nightmare. This isn't some dry legal document with technical arguments. This is a comprehensive roadmap of Trump's alleged crimes, backed by phone records, White House logs, witness testimony from people in Trump's inner circle, and documentary evidence that shows Trump knew exactly what he was doing and did it anyway. The filing exposes Trump's pressure campaign on Mike Pence in excruciating detail. It shows Trump was in constant contact with people plotting to overturn the election, even as the Capitol riot was happening. It documents conversations where Trump's own advisors told him his actions were illegal, and he pushed forward regardless. And the reaction from Trump's legal team? Absolute chaos. We're talking about emergency meetings, frantic attempts to get parts of the filing sealed, confusion and panic among senior lawyers who realized their entire defense strategy just got obliterated. This is the kind of evidence that ends political careers and sends people to prison. And it's all laid out in black and white in a court filing that's now part of the public record. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Sets an example for the world. We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone. Applying those laws, collecting facts, that's what determines the outcome of an investigation. Nothing more and nothing less. The prosecutors in my office are among the most talented and experienced in the Department of Justice. They have investigated this case hewing to the highest ethical standards, and they will continue to do so as this case proceeds. It's very important for me to note that the defendants in this case must be presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. To that end, my office will seek a speedy trial in this matter, consistent with the public interest and the rights of the accused.
So let's set the scene here because the scope and detail of Smith's filing is really unprecedented. This isn't a normal prosecutorial document where you present the minimum evidence needed to proceed. This is Smith essentially laying out his entire case before trial, showing Trump and the public exactly what evidence he has and how it proves each element of the crimes charged. The 165 pages contain a minute-by-minute timeline of Trump's actions after the 2020 election. They document specific phone calls, specific meetings, specific conversations where criminal conduct allegedly occurred. They include testimony from witnesses who were in the room when Trump made decisions or gave orders. They show documentary evidence, texts, emails, call logs that corroborates what those witnesses are saying. This is an overwhelming avalanche of evidence that would be difficult for any defendant to overcome, let alone one whose defense relies on claiming he didn't know his actions were wrong. The evidence about Trump's pressure campaign on Mike Pence is particularly damning and detailed. According to Smith's filing, Trump engaged in what witnesses described as direct threats and intimidation toward his own vice president to try to force Pence to illegally reject electoral votes during the January 6th certification. We're not talking about polite requests or political persuasion. We're talking about Trump allegedly threatening Pence, berating him, creating public pressure that Trump knew would put Pence in danger. And the filing documents all of this with witness testimony from people who heard these conversations, with records of when the calls happened, with evidence of what Trump knew about the potential consequences. Staffers apparently called Trump's schemes blatant illegal activity in private communications. That's Trump's own team acknowledging in real time that what he was doing was criminal. How do you defend against that kind of evidence? But it gets worse because Smith's filing also reveals that Trump was in constant contact with people who were orchestrating efforts to overturn the election in battleground states while the Capitol riot was happening on January 6th. Phone records show Trump making and receiving calls during key moments of the riot. White House logs document who he was talking to and when, and according to the filing, Trump was being warned by advisors during these calls that what was happening at the Capitol was dangerous and that he needed to call off his supporters. But instead of immediately doing that, Trump allegedly continued working the phones, trying to pressure members of Congress to reject electoral votes even as violence was unfolding. That shows a level of criminal intent and disregard for consequences that's absolutely stunning. It's one thing to push false fraud claims before January 6th. It's another level entirely to continue trying to overturn the election while your supporters are attacking the Capitol. The filing systematically destroys Trump's presidential immunity defense. Trump's lawyers have been arguing that everything he did was covered by presidential immunity because he was acting in his official capacity as president. But Smith provides forensic evidence, staff messages, internal emails showing that Trump knew his proposed actions were illegal but pushed forward anyway. And here's the key legal point. Official acts performed in good faith might be covered by immunity, but criminal acts performed with knowledge they're illegal are not. Smith is arguing that Trump wasn't performing presidential duties, he was committing crimes using the presidency as a tool, and the evidence apparently supports that distinction. When your own White House counsel is telling you something is illegal and you do it anyway, that's not an official act, that's a crime. The involvement of co-conspirators like Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon is also detailed extensively. Smith apparently has evidence showing these individuals orchestrated efforts in multiple states to create fake elector slates, to pressure state officials, to spread disinformation about fraud, and critically, the filing shows Trump was directing and coordinating with these people. This wasn't Giuliani going rogue, this was Giuliani acting on Trump's instructions. That makes Trump criminally liable not just for his own direct actions, but potentially for a broader conspiracy involving multiple people working together to overturn the election. Trump's attorneys have reportedly begged the judge to keep portions of Smith's filing sealed from public view. That tells you everything you need to know about how damaging this evidence is. When defense lawyers are desperately trying to prevent information from becoming public, it's because they know that information will destroy their client's case and reputation. The judge has apparently rejected most of these requests, which means the devastating details are now in the public record where journalists and voters can see them. Trump can't hide from this evidence or claim it's all speculation. It's documented fact presented by a federal prosecutor in an official court filing. So why does this matter beyond just Trump's legal jeopardy? Because this evidence exposes how close America came to a successful coup and how many people in Trump's orbit were involved in trying to make it happen. This isn't about one person making bad decisions. This is about a coordinated effort involving lawyers, political advisors, White House staff, campaign officials, all working together to overturn an election through illegal means. And the evidence Smith has gathered shows this wasn't accidental or based on good faith mistakes. This was deliberate, knowing criminal conduct. If our legal system can't hold people accountable for that, then the message to future would-be authoritarians is clear. You can try to steal an election, and the worst that happens is you lose and have to try again later. That's not acceptable in a democracy. Alright, so let's dig into the specific evidence that Jack Smith revealed and understand exactly why it's causing such chaos and panic in Trump's legal camp. Because the details of what's in this 165-page filing are absolutely devastating when you look at them closely. Let's start with the phone records and White House logs that Smith has obtained. These are objective, unchallengeable documents that show exactly when Trump made calls, who he called, how long the conversations lasted. You can't dispute phone records. They are what they are. And according to Smith's filing, these records show Trump was in constant communication with key figures in the plot to overturn the election throughout the post-election period and specifically on January 6th. We're talking about calls to Rudy Giuliani, calls to members of Congress, calls to state officials, calls to people organizing the fake elector schemes. The pattern of communication shows coordination and direction from Trump. This isn't circumstantial. This is direct evidence that Trump was actively involved in every aspect of the efforts to overturn the election. The January 6th timeline that Smith presents is particularly damning. The filing apparently documents Trump's actions and communications throughout that day with precision. When the riot started, who did Trump call? What did he say? When did advisors tell him to call off his supporters? How long did he wait before doing anything? All of this is documented with timestamps and records, and according to the filing, the timeline shows that Trump was told repeatedly that violence was occurring and that he needed to tell his supporters to leave the Capitol, but he delayed taking action for hours. During that delay, he was allegedly making calls trying to pressure members of Congress to object to electoral votes, even as those same members were being evacuated from the chamber. That shows Trump prioritized his efforts to overturn the election over stopping violence at the Capitol. That's consciousness of guilt and criminal intent right there in his actions. The witness testimony about Trump's pressure campaign on Mike Pence is incredibly detailed and comes from multiple sources. Smith apparently has testimony from White House staff who overheard Trump's phone calls with Pence. from Secret Service agents who were protecting Pence and witnessed the interactions, from Pence's own staff who saw how the pressure campaign affected Pence. These witnesses described Trump using threats, intimidation, public statements designed to turn his supporters against Pence. One particularly striking detail is that Trump allegedly continued attacking Pence publicly even after being told that Pence was in danger at the Capitol. When your own vice president is being evacuated by Secret Service because of threats from your supporters, and your response is to attack him further on social media, that shows a level of ruthlessness and disregard for consequences that's genuinely shocking. And Smith has multiple witnesses who can testify to these facts. The documentary evidence about Trump knowing his actions were illegal is perhaps the most important part of the filing. Smith apparently has emails and messages from White House lawyers warning Trump that his proposed actions would violate the law, memos explaining why Pence didn't have authority to reject electoral votes, communications where campaign lawyers said there was no evidence to support fraud claims in court. All of this was provided to Trump before he took the actions he's now charged with. That destroys any defense based on not knowing or reasonably believing. When multiple lawyers tell you something is illegal and you do it anyway, you can't later claim you didn't know it was wrong. The evidence of Trump's knowledge is overwhelming, according to this filing. Let's talk about the evidence regarding co-conspirators, because this is where things get really complicated for Trump. Smith's filing apparently details a network of people working together to implement various schemes to overturn the election. Rudy Giuliani was organizing fake elector slates in multiple states. John Eastman was developing legal theories about Pence's authority. Steve Bannon was coordinating with state officials and activists. And according to Smith, Trump was at the center of all of this, directing the activity, making decisions about strategy, staying in contact with everyone involved. Under federal conspiracy law, when multiple people work together toward a criminal goal, they're all liable for the acts of the conspiracy. So Trump isn't just facing charges for his own direct actions. He's potentially liable for everything Giuliani did, everything Eastman did, everything anyone in the conspiracy did in furtherance of the criminal goal. That massively expands his legal exposure. The evidence about Trump's state of mind is crucial for proving the charges. Smith needs to show not just that Trump did certain things, but that he did them with criminal intent knowingly and willfully. And the filing apparently contains extensive evidence of Trump's intent. Private statements where Trump acknowledged to advisors that he lost the election, moments where he admitted certain fraud claims were weak but said to push them anyway, conversations where he discussed the political benefits of creating doubt about the election, even if the legal challenges weren't successful. All of this goes to show that Trump's actions weren't based on genuine belief in fraud. They were based on a calculated decision to try to stay in power, regardless of what the law or the facts said. That's the kind of evidence that convinces juries to convict because it shows deliberate criminal conduct rather than mistakes or confusion. The pressure on state officials is another major thread in Smith's evidence. The filing apparently documents Trump's calls to state officials in Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and other swing states where he tried to pressure them to change election results or refuse to certify Biden's victory. The most famous example is the call to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, where Trump said, "I just want to find 11,780 votes." But Smith apparently has evidence of similar pressure campaigns in other states, often conducted by proxies, but at Trump's direction. Each of these incidents potentially constitutes a separate criminal act, attempting to interfere with state election administration. And when you add them all together, it shows a systematic national effort coordinated from the White House. The fake elector scheme is detailed extensively in the filing, according to reports. Trump's team organized slates of fake electors in 7 states who would claim to be the legitimate electors even though Biden had won those states. These fake electors met, signed certificates, and sent them to Congress to create confusion during the certification process. Smith apparently has evidence showing Trump was aware of this scheme, approved it, and directed subordinates to implement it. The evidence includes planning documents, communications between Trump's team and the fake electors, and testimony from people who participated, describing how they were recruited and what they were told. This scheme is particularly egregious because it involved creating fraudulent official documents, the fake elector certificates. That's not just political spin or aggressive lawyering, that's literal fraud. The reaction from Trump's legal team reveals just how devastating this evidence is. According to reports, Trump's lawyers held emergency meetings after Smith's filing dropped. They've been scrambling to figure out how to respond. Some of their arguments to try to keep parts of the filing sealed have been rejected by the judge, meaning the damaging information is now public. There are reports of confusion and disagreement among Trump's legal team about strategy going forward. Some want to continue with aggressive defenses and attacks on prosecutors. Others reportedly think the evidence is so strong that they need to consider other options. This kind of internal chaos and disagreement is exactly what you don't want when you're defending someone facing serious federal charges. It suggests the defense team knows they're in serious trouble and can't agree on how to get out of it. The political implications of this evidence becoming public are enormous. Republican lawmakers who have defended Trump's post-election conduct now have to confront detailed evidence that Trump knew what he was doing was illegal and did it anyway. How do you continue supporting someone when prosecutors have documented their criminal conduct in such detail? Some Republicans will double down and claim the prosecutors are lying or the evidence is fabricated. But others are going to start distancing themselves because defending someone whose criminality is this well documented becomes politically toxic. The split within the Republican Party over Trump could widen significantly as this evidence gets more attention. The impact on public opinion shouldn't be underestimated either. Many Americans who gave Trump the benefit of the doubt about January 6th and the post-election period might change their minds when they see the evidence Smith has compiled. The timeline of Trump continuing to work on overturning the election while the Capitol was under attack is particularly powerful imagery that's easy for average voters to understand. You don't need to be a legal expert to grasp that it's wrong for a president to ignore violence at the Capitol because he's busy trying to pressure Congress to reject electoral votes. That kind of conduct offends basic democratic values that transcend partisan politics. Okay, so let's break down what happens next and what these revelations mean for Trump's legal future and for American politics more broadly. Because this filing from Jack Smith is a turning point that changes the trajectory of everything going forward. First, Trump's legal team has to respond to this filing with their own arguments and evidence. But what do you say when prosecutors have this much documentation of your client's alleged crimes? Trump's lawyers will probably try several approaches. They'll attack the credibility of witnesses, claiming people are lying to protect themselves or to curry favor with prosecutors. But that becomes difficult when you have multiple witnesses saying the same things in documentary evidence corroborating their testimony. They'll argue the evidence is taken out of context or misinterpreted. But Smith's filing apparently provides full context and multiple sources for each claim. They'll continue pushing the presidential immunity defense, arguing Trump's actions were official acts. But when prosecutors can show Trump knew those acts were illegal, immunity becomes much harder to establish. None of these defense strategies are particularly strong against the evidence Smith has presented, which is why Trump's legal team is in such chaos. The possibility of additional charges or additional defendants is now very real. Smith's filing identifies co-conspirators by description, if not always by name. Some of these people, like Giuliani and Eastman, are already facing charges in other jurisdictions, but others might not have been charged yet. As Smith's evidence becomes public and as the scope of the conspiracy becomes clear, there could be pressure to charge more people who participated, and that creates opportunities for Smith to flip additional witnesses. If you're a lower-level participant who helped implement the fake elector scheme or who participated in pressuring state officials, and you see Smith has overwhelming evidence against Trump, you start thinking about whether you should cooperate to avoid serious prison time yourself. This is how conspiracy cases often expand. Evidence against the main defendant creates pressure on others to cooperate, leading to more evidence and more defendants. The timeline to trial is now a crucial question. With evidence this strong and this detailed, Smith is clearly ready to proceed to trial relatively quickly. Trump's team will try to delay through various motions and appeals, but judges tend to be skeptical of delay tactics when the evidence is this compelling and when the charges are this serious. We could potentially see trial within the next 6 to 9 months. That timing matters enormously because it affects the political calendar. A trial in 2026 would happen right as midterm campaigns are in full swing. A conviction before the election would devastate Republican chances in competitive races. Even a trial without conviction will keep Trump's alleged crimes in headlines throughout the campaign season. Trump wants delay to push any trial past election cycles, but Smith wants to move quickly while evidence is fresh and before political dynamics make prosecution more complicated. The impact on Trump's other legal cases is significant. He faces state charges in Georgia related to election interference. He faces federal charges related to classified documents. He has civil cases in New York. The evidence Smith has revealed in this filing could be useful to prosecutors in those other cases. The Georgia case in particular involves similar conduct, pressure on state officials, fake elector schemes, so evidence from Smith's federal case could strengthen the state case. We might see coordination between Smith and other prosecutors sharing evidence and testimony. This creates a situation where Trump faces legal jeopardy on multiple fronts simultaneously, with evidence in one case reinforcing charges in another. For Trump's political future, this evidence is potentially fatal. Running for president while facing overwhelming evidence of having tried to overthrow the government is difficult even for someone with Trump's devoted base. The evidence Smith has presented isn't vague or circumstantial, it's detailed documentation of specific criminal acts. How do you campaign on law and order or on respect for the Constitution when prosecutors can point to 165 pages of evidence that you tried to ignore both? Trump will try to turn this into a rally the base issue where he's the victim of political persecution, but that narrative becomes harder to sustain when the evidence of actual crimes is this strong. Some portion of his support will stick with him regardless, but persuadable voters and moderate Republicans are likely to be troubled by these revelations. The Republican Party faces a genuine crisis over how to handle this situation. Party leaders know that Trump's legal problems and the evidence against him are serious liabilities heading into elections. But Trump still commands significant loyalty from the party's base, and opposing him openly invites primary challenges and backlash. So Republicans are stuck between a rock and a hard place: continue supporting someone whose criminality is well documented, or break with him and face consequences from his supporters. Different Republicans will make different calculations, which will create visible splits and conflicts within the party. That internal division makes it harder to present a unified message to voters and makes it easier for Democrats to pick up seats in competitive races. The precedent being set for presidential accountability is historically significant. Smith's prosecution shows that former presidents can be held criminally liable for their actions, even when those actions were taken while in office. The evidence he's presented demonstrates that claims of immunity or official acts don't protect presidents who commit crimes. This is important for deterring future abuses of power, but it also raises questions about whether prosecutions could become politically weaponized. The strength of Smith's evidence suggests this is a legitimate prosecution based on actual crimes rather than political motivation, but future cases might not be as clear-cut. How we handle Trump's prosecution will shape norms around presidential accountability for generations. The public's understanding of January 6th and the post-election period is being fundamentally reshaped by Smith's evidence. Many people had partial or confused understanding of what Trump did and why. This filing provides a comprehensive narrative backed by evidence that makes Trump's conduct clear and understandable. Trump wasn't just questioning election results or pursuing legal challenges. He was coordinating a criminal conspiracy to overturn an election he knew he lost. He was pressuring officials to break the law. He was putting his vice president in danger, and he did all of this knowingly and deliberately. That clarity changes how people think about January 6th and about Trump's fitness for office. Looking at the immediate future, the next few months will be crucial. Trump's team will file their response to Smith's evidence. The judge will rule on various motions, including Trump's immunity claims. Smith may file additional briefs or evidence. And throughout all of this, the political dynamics will continue evolving as candidates position themselves for 2026 elections. The chaos in Trump's legal camp that this filing has caused isn't going to resolve quickly. This is the kind of evidence that fundamentally undermines a defense strategy, forcing lawyers to rebuild from scratch while their client continues making the situation worse through public statements and continued insistence on his innocence despite overwhelming evidence. Here's the bottom line. After examining all the angles, Jack Smith has presented what appears to be an overwhelming case against Trump, backed by phone records, witness testimony, documentary evidence, and detailed timelines. This evidence shows Trump knew his actions were illegal, was warned repeatedly by advisors, and proceeded anyway with a criminal conspiracy to overturn an election. Trump's legal team is in chaos, trying to figure out how to defend against this evidence. The political implications are massive, as Republicans struggle with how to handle revelations that one of their leaders committed serious federal crimes, and the precedent being set for presidential accountability will shape American democracy for decades. Whether Trump ultimately faces conviction or somehow avoids it, Smith's filing has permanently changed the historical record and the political landscape. The evidence is out there now, documented and detailed, showing exactly what Trump did and why it was criminal. That's not going away regardless of what happens next in the legal process.